Welcome to Astonishing Legends.
What are you doing?
Well, I figured can't you use that?
You're a guest.
I know, but
I
have a good.
It's not your show.
I have a good voice. Just you don't have to use it now. Just at some point, you have that. It's recorded. It sounds great.
We don't really need it.
Who knows? But did it record?
Yeah, it recorded.
Okay, fine.
All right.
You'll use it.
Welcome to the Astonishing Legends podcast.
That is good. Welcome to Astonishing Legends.
That was Mark DeAndre. I'm Scott Philbrook, and this is Forrest Burgess.
Hollywood is a place where they'll pay you $1,000 for a kiss and 50 cents for your soul. Marilyn Monroe.
Everyone knows that most movies have happy endings, but the life of a star in Hollywood doesn't always turn out that way. Tonight we're going to be talking about that and taking a closer look at one starlet who literally became a prisoner in her own home.
It's just like a perfect metaphor. She was trapped in this place. I mean, she kept getting fan mail up till the end, supposedly.
Tonight's show, which is also our first show, features a friend of ours who will be a guest from time to time, Mark DeAndre.
Hello.
We felt like this was a good show to lead out with because it gives you a taste of how we feel we're different from other shows in this genre.
Right. Now, Astonishing Legends isn't just about the paranormal. It's really about any strange story with details that may never be known, or things that aren't supposed to happen, and yet they seem to. Now, this episode, for example, is mostly about death, and how when it comes for you, you don't have a whole lot of say in the matter. Now, why don't you tell our listeners how Mark became such a big part of this episode?
Mark is kind of an expert. Not an expert, he's making a face, but he knows more than most people about celebrity and pop culture deaths, especially strange ones. And here in L.A., he even took Forrest and I and some visiting friends on a death tour last year, and we felt like a lot of what we saw on that tour would make for a good episode of Astonishing Legends, especially the last house we visited. But we're going to save that one for later. Our first stop on the tour was the house where Canadian Playboy Playmate and 1980 Playmate of the Year, Dorothy Stratton, was killed when she was only 20 years old.
Yeah, Mark, can you tell us a little bit about Dorothy?
So Dorothy Stratton she was discovered by some kind of seedy, kind of low-life pimp-type dude up in British Columbia. His name's Paul Snyder. And she was I'm sure if you've seen pictures of her, but she's super pretty. And so he sent pictures of her into Hugh Hefner, and, he was kind of blown away, I guess. So basically brought her down here. She became a Playmate of the Year. Got into the kind of the Hollywood scene, and as she kind of like got more popular, her kind of boyfriend, who they were trying to just like put to the side because he was such a creep, he was always lingering. And so anyway, she got into movies. She made this movie, They All Laughed, by Peter Bogdanovich. They fell in love, and it kind of became a thing with them. The movie Star 80 was kind of based on her life, and they shot the movie actually in the place where she was killed, which is kind of an interesting fact, which is 10881 Clarkson in Los Angeles. So basically her and Snyder were split up. He had actually hired like a private detective to like follow her around, so he was clearly cuckoo. And, she went to his place, and he invited her over. They were just going to settle up something. She was going to give him some money, or he was going to give her some money or something. And basically, he was there ready to kill her. He shot her, and then he shot himself. And she's buried in Westwood, and her grave has this super weird epitaph it's like a quote from a Farewell to Arms. Doesn't really make sense, and it just says, we love you, D.R. And I guess that was her middle initial, and that's what Peter Bogdanovich always called her, DR. And the weirdest thing is, he got involved with her younger sister, and the rumor is he made her have plastic surgery, so she looked more like Dorothy.
Wow.
Which is...
Why is seeing these locations appealing to you?
Well, whenever you see a place where something crazy went down, it just has a different feeling. Like me and my friend jumped over the gate to where the Manson killings happened before they tore the house down, and like there was still elements of the house there. And it just had this obviously, it was probably manufactured in our heads, but it had this crazy aura of evil. It's all perception, I'm sure. If you said to me, oh, this house over here is where the craziest thing ever went down, all the John Wayne Gacy murders, this happened right here. Oh my God, look at that place. I can tell. It's weird. Oh, actually, no, it's the one next to it. Oh, okay, yeah, that one. I can really sense evil,
Right.
So
so you don't think there's anything to those feelings when
Well, it's real in that something weird happened there, and it's I mean, yeah, if I was in that house and like staying there or hanging out, you know, where something happened, every little weird thing that is normal would freak me out. You know, any noise, everything has meaning.
So have you ever experienced anything that you couldn't really explain that you felt like was tangible proof of life after death or a ghost or anything like that?
No.
Have you ever seen a UFO?
No.
Have you ever...
No ghosts. I mean, I would love to see one, and, you know, I don't actively pursue any of that stuff, but I'm very open to it. But, yeah, really nothing. I mean, aside from just the Manson thing, weird things, which is all just, that's really nothing super strange.
So getting back to your dearly departed tour, after we saw the Stratton house, you took us some other interesting places.
Where Marilyn Monroe died, then, like, kind of to the Mommy Dearest house where Joan Crawford lived, and the whole crazy shit went down there. And then obviously there's like, then you get into Beverly Hills. There's some like, that's where you get into like Bugsy Siegel, the Menendez brothers, Lana Turner, Johnny Stompanato thing.
That's kind of one of my favorite. Why don't you just, a lot of people probably don't know that story.
I'm not really an expert on the story, but Lana Turner, huge movie star, and she kind of was into like Bad Boys. And this Johnny Stompanato character he owned I think a store in West Hollywood, but he was just kind of a sleazeball, and he was associated with Mickey Cohn. And it was just a super kind of violent, abusive relationship. And she wanted to end it, but kind of couldn't. And anyway, one night, it was actually after the Oscars. She came back from the Oscars, and he was at home. And they were arguing, and her daughter took a knife from the kitchen, went upstairs to where they were arguing. He came outside, basically just like walked right into the knife and pretty much was killed fairly instantly. There's a whole bunch of other stuff, whatever. Lawyer came over. It took 2 hours before they called the police. Did she do it? Did the girl do it?
Now, which mobster are you talking about here?
Okay, Stompanato was not that famous. The guy he worked for was famous. That was Mickey Cohen. He was sent to L.A. by Meyer Lansky to work with Bugsy and work on the Flamingo.
Work for him.
Yeah, work for him. And Cohen was instrumental, apparently, in setting up the race wire, which made all the Vegas betting work, was having a wire for the race results. But Mickey and Bugsy worked together, and after Bugsy got shot, Mickey got pretty freaked out and had several attempts on his life, including something happened at his house.
Well,
right?
they tried to blow up his house.
Here in L.A.?
Yes.
Yeah. So after that, he hired a bodyguard, and that bodyguard was Johnny Stompanato. And Johnny was the one that was dating Lana Turner. Now, and the thing about Johnny was he was a rough guy. You know, he'd been in the war too. He fought at the Battle of Okinawa, which was a nasty piece of business. And,
yes.
But you know, he was a mobster.
Now, I think by her description is that she, he was also kind of a handsome guy, mysterious, soft spoken, quiet, strong presence, which probably attracted her to him. But then when she started to find out, well, this guy's got ties to the L.A. mob, which was a pretty violent and wild kind of era for Los Angeles. As much of a badass as he was, who was badder than he?
Well, the ultimate bad man himself, Sean Connery, the only man. Because
give us a little bit of that story.
Lana was shooting a movie with Sean Connery called Another Time, Another Place. Stompanato went over to the set with a gun and threatened them. At which point, Sean promptly took the gun from him and basically chased him off the set. Yeah. It's like, this is a gangster. And Connery's like putting him out on your bike.
Yeah.
So anyway, but Stompanato, I guess not a great guy. And Mickey, I don't think was particularly close to him. Because after he died, he put him in a cheap coffin and sold all of his love letters to Lana to the press or something.
Yeah, I think he was just considered muscle.
Yeah.
And became troublesome with his antics, especially when you start dating one of the best known and beloved actresses of the time, and you're causing problems. That shines a light onto their activities, and they can't have that.
Okay, so that covers some of the more famous cases in Hollywood, but what about the not-so-famous ones that honestly tell you a lot more about Hollywood's reality?
Yeah, this was a good one.
We came to this little house, a little overgrown house, just off Benedict Canyon, which Mark talks about.
We took this drive last October, right?
Yeah. Let's get back to Mark. He tells it best.
Well, this was around Halloween, ish. So, I mean, you couldn't ask for a more perfect... This thing looked like it was, from Universal Studios, already staged, directed, like a miniature wooden, cobwebby, dirty windows...
It's
run
hard to
down. And the connection to the Manson thing, there's really no connection other than basically off the same street, off Benedict Canyon, which is off Sunset, so you basically right by the Hotel Bel Air. We knew it was a place because it was the weirdest looking place and spookiest place ever. Where this lady was found dead, mummified, after sitting there for a year in front of a space heater. And, I mean, it was just unrecognizable mummification, had to be identified through whatever, DNA, I suppose.
Who was this woman?
Her name's Yvette Vickers. She was Playboy Playmate originally, and then she was in Attack of the 50-Foot Woman, Attack of the something else, Giant Leeches or something.
Horrifying, mysterious creatures, thirsting for lovers' blood.
She was in a couple of movies that had something about giant things. I don't know why. I don't know if she went for that or
Mark's background on Yvette is a little vague.
Well, I just want to know, tell me a little bit about her career.
Well,
her
all
life
right.
and
So
career.
she was born actually on my birthday, not the year, mind you, but August 26, 1928. And she died circa 2010. Not a whole lot of people have circas these days because they're not really sure when she died.
Well, they know when she was found, and I think the coroner...
And the last time she was seen alive.
Yes, and they can kind of back time that to a specific date, but nobody knows the exact day.
Right, and she was a B-movie actress, and she had her first picture. She had a small part in Sunset Boulevard, where she was credited as Yvette Vedder, and she had an ongoing professional relationship with James Cagney, who cast her in a few things. And then eventually she was famous for her shape, and she was 36, 24, 36. She herself said there were a lot of directors of photography and cameramen who always kind of wanted to shoot her from the back at that stage in her career. So she took a risk and became a playmate in July of 1959 in a centerfold that was shot by Russ Meyer, famous exploitation director who did Faster Pussycat, Kill Kill, and a lot of other movies. But she wasn't ever sure whether that Playboy centerfold was a good move or a bad move, but several of the pictures, which you can find online, were shot in the house that we're talking about. So that it's kind of crazy. There were
at the time it was a nice little bungalow, not overgrown, so it lent itself well to kind of intimate portraits like that.
Right. There's a connection to some of our other stories that we covered in this piece tonight, but one being, of course, that she was in Playboy, just like Dorothy Stratton. And another interesting thing is that she dated Cary Grant for a while. She dated Lee Marvin as well. She sort of knew everybody, and she was raised by jazz musicians, so she was into the beat scene and actually recorded a jazz album later in life. But the interesting thing about the Cary Grant relationship was it was a pretty real relationship, and she described him as a very loving, humble, down-to-earth guy. And he sort of he mentioned that he hinted around that he was looking to get married, and she was not interested in it because she had some bad marriages. So ultimately, he broke up with her to marry Diane Cannon, which she was fine with. They were friends. It was amicable. Everything was fine. But then, in a strange twist of events, Diane and Cary lived at that house on Cielo that later became the Tate house, the murder house. So, which was not too far from where Yvette was living. So it's all, everything. It's a very small society.
It's celebrities and actors. It's an exclusive club. And the other interesting thing is if one person can get a hold of another through managers and agents, and that's how people make connections. It's like if you go to work and you go to the lunchroom and you say, hey, does anybody know of a house for rent? And word gets out. And that's why it's not unusual for a nice property in the Benedict Canyon or Beverly Hills or Bel Air house to be rented by 5 or 6 famous people during the course of its life.
Right. All right, let's get back to Mark.
And actually, her very first part, which is kind of ties into her life in a weird way, is she was just, I think, an extra or a very small part in Sunset Boulevard, the Billy Wilder movie with Gloria Swanson and William Holden, in which Gloria Swanson plays this ex-movie star recluse.
Norma Desmond.
Yeah, Norma Desmond. I'm still big. It's the pictures that got small. And so her life, in a weird way, paralleled Norma Desmond in that she was a star. I mean, Norma Desmond was probably a much bigger star, but she became this, kind of lost her looks, became extremely paranoid.
You're talking about Yvette.
Yvette, yeah, became paranoid, very reclusive, and basically just trapped in this house, almost, I guess, literally to where it became her tomb.
What about her neighbors? Like, why didn't people notice?
Well, yeah, that's the weird thing. It's like, I guess there was
Who found her?
A neighbor that knew her was walking around. I guess was walking around. Supposedly, I don't know how you don't see this after 2 months, but I guess after a year of no mail being picked up. Geez. So obviously there was this yellowed mail and stuff. I don't know if they were trying to stick it in the front door, and it was just like piling up, and eventually someone looked over there and said, "Oh, this is strange." So I think the neighbor basically opened the door, walked upstairs, and then up in this little room, she just saw this space heater was on, and next to the space heater was this mass of person, mummified looking, whatever a mummy looks like. The vet was so paranoid about people trying to mess around with her. She was like, she kept getting fan mail up till the end, supposedly.
Didn't she have a stalker or something, or like?
Well, supposedly she recorded a bunch of like hang-ups, and she filed a report with like the Bel Air Police Department. I think she was just kind of this old crank who maybe was being harassed by someone. I imagine her phone number was probably in the book. It's just like a perfect metaphor. She was trapped in this place. The neighbor had said, we're all very private. We're all very respectful of each other's privacy, but maybe too much. Which is, especially an LA thing. That's the weird thing about Los Angeles or some of these big towns. You could have someone next door to you dead, and you don't ever talk to your neighbor. People don't talk to your neighbors. I don't necessarily either, so I'm not saying I'm some holier than thou guy that's like walking around checking on everyone.
I'd heard, I can't remember who said it, but I'd heard a quote once, LA's the largest lonely city in the world or something like that. You spend all your time in your car or in your home. You're all constantly encapsulated. And I live in Studio City, and I've only been here a couple of years, and I did live in Los Angeles before, but not over in the part where all the studios are. And I constantly see people that I'm convinced were performers when they were younger, and they've had so much plastic surgery. They're wandering around the grocery stores here and Bed Bath & Beyond, and they look like zombies. It's actually kind of scary, and it's also depressing, and it's the dark side of Hollywood. Because when Hollywood, if that's your thing, and if you're an actor, and when it's done with you, it's done with you.
Well, yeah, Hollywood eats its young is like what people say. It's they're very disposable and brutally so. Once you're out, you're out.
And if you're one of the 5 people listening to our show at this stage, and you go online to our website, astonishinglegends.com, you can find lots of links and pictures with information about Yvette. She was a beautiful woman. There were some pictures that were taken in the yard.
1950s, her first Playboy thing, and there's some that in her place, and she was really, she was pretty.
With all due respect to her, it's sad, it's a sad passing, but it's a crazy story. It's the kind of story we like on Astonishing Legends. So,
and hopefully, she just died, and then like the mummy part hopefully she wasn't feeling anything. It just she just expired and then became a mummy.
Hey everybody, if you're enjoying the show, please do us a favor and go to iTunes and give us 5 glorious stars so that others may find us.
Yeah, we could use all the help we could get just coming out of the gate here.
I'm Paula Pell, and when I'm alone and terrified, I listen to Astonishing Legends with Scott Philbrook and Forrest Burgess.
So what did Yvette actually die from?
Well, the coroner found that she died of heart disease, which is, I guess, what gets us all in the end.
Right, but I think, she had some heart problems, probably wasn't taking good care of herself.
Yeah, she was sitting in a chair. She probably just had a heart attack, and the space heater was on and the conditions were right.
I think there's 2 ways that I've heard when you're left unattended after you've passed away.
That's charitable.
I know. You either dry up, depending on the conditions, or you liquefy. And
Breaking Bad in the bathtub, right?
Well, no, that's aided with chemicals. I think naturally. Yeah, now, I'd heard a story in the local Southern California area on the news, and again, it's the person who is passed away with no close relatives and is not discovered for quite a while. And this poor woman who was taking a nap on her couch and felt a drip on her cheek.
Oh no! Please
and doesn't know what and looks up, and there's a spot on the ceiling. Yeah, and okay. So not to get too graphic, but that is that's the other way you go. Or depending on maybe your body chemistry and the conditions in the room being kind of warm, you just kind of dry out. And
And what was that the British thing you were talking about?
Well, this is this gets into the other, for me, interesting aspect. Now, I think Mark brought something else up as the most interesting aspect. But for me, looking at the empirical part of it, it's like I think in both of these stories, there was a young woman, kind of youngish, in Britain who had passed away, but nobody had noticed. And then after like 6 months or a year or 2 years, they go into the apartment, and it's like, well, the television, the
what?
The telly was on, or here was
that your British
heater.
accent? Jesus.
No, it's not. No, you don't want to be, because everybody does. You don't want to get into that. But and if I get more back story on this, I might launch into one. But here's another interesting aspect. It's been widely reported or taken as part of the circumstances that the space heater was on when they discovered her.
Right.
I don't know about the television.
No, it was on. No, yeah, the television, no, but the space heater was on.
And that's my question. Who's paying the electric bill? How does these utilities stay on for so long?
Well, Mark came back for a follow-up that's coming up here towards the end of our piece, and he's going to talk about how the bills were getting paid.
Okay.
All right, let's get back to him.
So after we finished, there was actually recently a Los Angeles Magazine article on Yvette Vickers. We did this show before that, so we just wanted to let everyone know, or I wanted to let, I don't know who know, but someone that we got there first. Not that it was obviously people knew about it, but anyway, don't think, if you see that Los Angeles Magazine article, don't think, oh, they just saw that and thought it was cool. So anyway, Yvette Vickers had taken she was on vacation, or she would go on these weird tour things where they would, she was selling autographs. I guess she actually kind of even got into meeting up with some of her fans. She would go to another state and hang out with someone she had met at these autograph things, probably some weird freaky fan. And she would go, nothing sexual, but I think she would just go and hang out with these people. Probably would satiate her need for adulation or whatever. She would go on these trips where she would, that she had met people on these, autograph functions. There's all kind of crazy fan things where the people go and spend $20 to get an autograph from someone like Yvette Vickers. I guess there's obsessive people out there. Although I have an autograph collection, but let's not get into that. She would go on these trips, and then she put her mail on hold. So when she came back, she forgot to, or just didn't put her mail back off hold. So basically for that year or 8-9 months where she was dead and kind of mummifying, I guess the mail wasn't accumulating like crazy. There was only a few letters that kind of got through. Even when you put mail on hold, some letters get through. So there was just like a few letters in there that had kind of yellowed and stuff, but it wasn't like it wasn't 8 months worth of mail, which is the one thing I was like, how the hell would you have that much mail and no one would notice? So that's why. And I guess when the lady came, the friend that lived nearby, came to check on her, she had opened up the mailbox and there were some letters in there, but there was a bunch of cobwebs. That's when she started to get worried. Supposedly she had a really bad feeling anyway, but that was kind of like, okay, this ain't good. And the only other bit of information I found out was that I guess the house is actually sold now. I think for $275,000. It was on the market, I think, for $495. Obviously, it's a major fixer-upper, but it's also got some strangeness involved that usually reduces the price by quite a bit.
All right, well, thanks, Mark, for coming in. Appreciate it.
I hope to go on some adventures soon and find ghosts or...
Well, there's, you haven't heard it yet as of this recording, but we recorded a story with some folks about the Queen Mary that's pretty cool. Something crazy went down in a room there where they spent the night. I may call the Queen Mary and see if that room's available, and we might send you over.
I don't think I can make it. I think I'm backing out. No.
We're going to send you down there. Anyway, well, thanks for coming by.
See ya, buddy.
We'll see you next time.
Okay.
So, Scott, that was a great interview with Mark. He's quite a character.
Yes, he is. I can't wait to send him into the fray. Wait, what's the expression? That's not right. I can't wait
you can send him into the fray.
Into the breach?
Fray is pretty good.
I'm sure listeners are like banging their heads
we'll
against
come
the
back
wall.
to it. No, I was just saying that, once we try and get Mark out in the wilds, researching spooky things of interest, to cover them, and of course something strange happens and then nobody believes him. That would be the best fate for Mark that I could imagine.
Or nothing strange happens.
Or nothing happens at all. And
the thing about Mark is whatever happens, whether something or nothing happens, it's still going to be entertaining.
Oh, sure. No, he's an entertaining
At least
fellow.
in my mind.
Well, there's one thing, though, that's an interesting note that I like to think about is I've gotten older and the passage of time. Everybody who now thinks they're hot and cool and gorgeous, and you are at the moment, but one day you will get old, and you're basically going to turn out to be a 40-pound bag of beef jerky.
Let's wrap this up.
Yeah, it's about time. If you actually liked our show, look for us in 2 weeks when we come back with a couple who found out they weren't the only ones in their cabin during a stay on the Queen Mary.
I want to thank Judson Crane for our amazing theme music, Ryan McCullough for world-class sound design, and Jim Creative Design.
But most importantly, we want to thank our listeners. You can find us online at astonishinglegends.com, on Facebook at the Astonishing Legends Podcast, and also on Twitter.
Copyright Scott Philbrook
and Forrest Burgess. Good night.